No one took better physical care of his NFL legacy than Emmitt Smith. He was legendary for the meticulous manner in which each of his touchdown footballs was labeled and saved. That part of his legacy was within his control. In 5 years, Hall of Fame voters will no doubt usher Smith into Canton. But part of his career fans consider in the meantime are his final 2 seasons in a uniform decidedly not Dallas. He epitomized the Cowboys dynasty that ruled the NFL through the mid-90s. And certainly by the numbers, Emmitt Smith was the best runner the game has ever seen.
That should do it. Move over, sweetness. Make a place for Emmett.
And when circumstances, age, and the salary cap sent him off to Arizona, he vowed to bring that same domination in a new uniform.
It's not over yet. My mind is far from retirement, and we'll deal with retirement when the time comes. But right now, my motivation and my goals are in sight, and I'm going after it. And I'm going after it with a new team. And we're going out there to get what we believe and what we perceive as ours, an opportunity to win a Super Bowl.
That was certainly his intention, but Emmitt Smith's 2 years in Arizona encompassed only 10 victories and just 1 personally productive season, none of which diminishes his 3 Super Bowl championships, but it does add his time in red and white to the parade of jarring images in the mind's eye. The swashbuckling Joe Namath, the ultimate Jet, spending a final season as the backup quarterback for the Los Angeles Rams. Johnny Unitas, after 17 years in gritty Baltimore, playing a final year as the Chargers' 3rd quarterback on a team which had just 2 victories. Even Franco Harris, eternally recalled in dynastic Steeler black and gold, played 1 last year as a Seattle Seahawk. Bruce Smith, the foundation of a Buffalo defense through 15 years and 4 Super Bowl appearances, finishing 4 years with a Redskins team which never made the playoffs.
He throws to the end zone. It is caught for a touchdown by Davis.
But Joe Montana's arrival in Kansas City, after 13 epic years as a Niner, did bring the Chiefs 2 playoff appearances, including the AFC Championship game. Not all legends were able to extend their magic in a different uniform. Michael Jordan as a Wizard, Patrick Ewing with the Magic, O.J. Simpson, a Buffalo icon, running for the Niners.
Somebody's got to take my shoes and take my place. But you can bet your sweet life that I won't play until I drop. But I'll play until I damn near drop. Thank you.
After reshaping baseball in Yankee pinstripes, a diminished Babe Ruth hit his final home runs as a Boston Brave. History records Henry Aaron as a Milwaukee Brewer when he set the all-time home run mark, a 42-year-old part-time designated hitter. And though Willie Mays' New York homecoming as a Met saw him play in a final World Series, the images of that time, Mays, a 42-year-old center fielder, remain a small but compelling part of his legacy. At this very moment, the national pastime watches the once most beloved Cub leaving the friendly confines. Sammy Sosa's epic years in Chicago will have an appendix, his upcoming time in Baltimore, where he will pass 600 home runs. By the time Emmitt Smith broke Walter Payton's rushing record, the Cowboys had fallen into disrepair, and Smith was clearly not in the team's plans.
I'm no longer a Dallas Cowboy, and but that's a title that I lose. But I am still a football player, and that's a title that will be with me for the rest of my life.
Emmitt Smith will ride off 2 years a Cardinal, but his old quarterback says, don't hold that against him.
When it's all said and done and he's away from the game, you know, they're only going to be remembering him as a Dallas Cowboy, and they're going to show the highlights from when he was with the Cowboys because he didn't have any highlights when he was with the Cardinals.
Troy Aikman earlier today in Jacksonville. To look at the impact of Emmitt Smith's final 2 years on his NFL legacy, we say good evening to Jim Litke, national columnist for the Associated Press. Welcome, Jim.
Thank you.
Now, Michael Irvin said, well, yeah, sure, it's his own career, but even Michael admits, saying, you know, I felt a little bit cheated that this guy leaves, and yet he was wearing another uniform. So even a fellow athlete and a fellow Cowboy feels a little bit of that emotion.
Well, sure. You know, I think all of us would love that clean ending. I mean, you know, a lot of us remember Jim Brown in the white and orange of Cleveland Browns. I mean, you remember Sandy Koufax as a Dodger, but you know, frankly, I went and saw Joe Montana his last couple of seasons in Kansas City, saw him get to the playoffs, and so I understand, you know, how divided an athlete himself has got to feel in a situation like this.
Yet there's some cognitive dissonance. When you look at it from the outside looking in, you know, we see Joe Montana as a Niner in our mind's eye. We see Emmitt Smith as a Cowboy, and there he is in different colors, and it just doesn't strike you right.
Well, you know, the thing that makes them the great athletes that they are is that competitiveness, and so that's the difficult part at the end of every career. You know, it'd be nice if somebody could tap you on your shoulder and say the run is over, you know, and every athlete leave in that sort of state of grace. You remember Michael Jordan in Utah with his fingers turned down on that jump shot, you know, celebrating what would have been the absolute peak of his career. But even he, and maybe most of all he, because he was the most competitive athlete, frankly, I ever saw, had no idea when it was time to go. He, you know, it's very hard when you've been sort of the king of the world, and that's what it is when you're a Michael Jordan and Emmitt Smith, to suddenly say, okay, I've had enough. And so a lot of these guys look to hang on in ways that, you know, may bother the rest of us. We feel they're tarnishing their legacy. But these guys are so competitive, I don't think they're ever going to be able to see that, you know, without help, without a support network in place, and most often, frankly, without something else to do.
Well, some guys obviously have accomplished so much that a year or two here or there, when you look back in 10 or 15 years, it may not make a difference. But you did mention Michael Jordan, the guy you've covered close up there in Chicago, came back twice. And the second time was not a happy ending, certainly, with the Wizards. To what extent do you think his decisions to come back and the circumstances under which it all finally ended in Washington might have some lingering, more than just temporal effects on how people think back on him?
Well, you know, it's funny. I remember talking to Michael a couple of times, and one of the things that he often mentioned was the precursor to that scene, which was Willie Mays stumbling around in the outfield in a New York Mets uniform. I mean, I'll never forget him saying how sad that made him feel. And, you know, a lot of us remember Johnny Unitas. I mean, there's a couple of athletes that we fix in our minds. You know, as I said, we'd like to see leave like Koufax and Jim Brown. And then there's the Jordans and the Johnny Unitases, and even to an extent, Joe Montana, and I suppose now Emmitt Smith in a way, where that cognitive dissonance you talked about. You know, we think of them in one uniform, sort of at the peak of their power, and these guys will never be able to let that go, and so they're willing to look for, you know, in some cases it's a championship, to linger one more year to get that championship. But, you know, in Emmitt Smith's case, what's interesting, I don't know that you could say he covered himself in glory, but frankly, I think he finished the season with something like 937 yards rushing, and he did this, you know, at the time that the Cardinals were trying to break in a bunch of other backs. If this guy was 26 instead of 36, we'd say, you know what, he's got a pretty promising future. So, you know, it's hard to be measured against yourself, especially when you've been one of the great players. And I think that's the other thing about the uniform that's so jarring to us, because we not only now are seeing a guy we're used to seeing one way, we're seeing him perform differently, not at the same level that he was at, and that makes it even sadder to some extent.
And by the time he got the record going well over 18,000 at final tally, this Dallas team was an afterthought. They had 5 and 11 records for 3 consecutive seasons. By the time he got it late in the 2002 season, that was the only reason to watch a Cowboys game.
Oh, absolutely, and quite frankly, you know, in one sense, people are going to say that maybe that's the reason that he was able to run all those yards and hang on for so long, but I think maybe it was just the opposite. I mean, the fact that he's now played the seasons in Arizona just are a testament to this guy's durability. I mean, he's not a big running back. He is not a guy that you think about as a punishing running back, but, you know, he was very smart about how he played. He took very, very good care of himself. And frankly, you know, his dedication to the game, I think, you know, is tied very closely to not only his competitiveness, but his love of things. And so, you know, I have a hard time, even though, like I said, it makes me sad too, I have a hard time saying to any athlete, your time is up. And I don't know who's the right person to say that, and, you know, which athletes are, you know, should gamble that extra year or not. It's their legacy. You know, I have a hard time, again, saying, you know, you don't tar that legacy because we don't want to see it. It's a ball player's decision, and I suppose ultimately the rest of us have to learn to live with it.
And that's why they call us fans, and they make the big bucks as the players. Jim Litke, it's always a pleasure having you with us. We appreciate it.
Thanks, Bob. Pleasure being here.
All right. Thanks a great deal.